Hello and welcome to Among the Lilies. I am your host, Cameron Frad. I always say that, it's what comes out of my mouth once I see the microphone, or now I guess see the camera. I'd have to look up to see the microphone. I just wanted to say hi, and I disappeared for a little bit for the last week. I went south because my body was like shutting down again. But I don't know if you've noticed on Instagram, I seem to be doing better. My posts are lovely and what I'm saying is beautiful. And I can say that because it's actually not me. It's a good friend of mine. She's wonderful and amazing. And she is so great. She has kids the same ages as mine. So like we joke. So she has 4 kids and I have 4 kids, but 6 of our kids moved together as one. And so like I met a new family that just moved to Steubenville yesterday at an Easter potluck. Our friends have this great big Easter party and so many people, like thousands of children and a handful of adults because they're mainly all big Catholic families. But we were having a blast, and this one family was new to town. I was like, oh, nice to meet you. And they're like, oh, I met your kids. I was like, you met my kids? And they're like, yeah, they dropped off food with this other family. And I was like, oh, that sounds about right, because our kids just move as one herd and they're lovely. We had a painter that was painting our house for a while, and he's like, so you have 7 kids? I was like, no, but I see why you think that because these 6 move as one. And so my friend is amazing and beautiful, and she's like me, also homeschools, also has tons of health issues. We have a lot of the same diseases. They just manifest differently. And so on good days, so we used to have, we're still kind of, I don't know, we're still trying to figure out our good days and bad days, but we're very understanding for the other. When one of us is having a bad day, the other just kind of steps in as mom and responsible adult to look after the herd of children. And our kids are all best friends. It's really beautiful and amazing. But I was gone. I ended up going to Florida. We were going to have freezing weather again. My body was already shutting down. My hip was dislocating every step I took and just was in a lot of pain. And then we heard it was going to snow that night. And Matt and I were talking at dinner time. He's like, just get in the car, drive south. I was like, I can't do that. The girls have state for gymnastics like on Friday. Then we have Easter. We have all these things. Like there's all these reasons I can't leave. And he's like, your body's not functioning. Just get in the car, drive south. So one of my best friends from childhood lives in Greenville, and then another one of my best friends lives in Savannah. And so I said, I'll text or call them. If either are available, I'll think about it. And so we decided, me and my youngest son decided that we were just going to drive south. And so after dinner, we got in the car and just left. And it started snowing as we were leaving. And so I feel like I left a lot of things like unfinished, and even like I didn't have time to chat with my friend who's doing my Instagram about like what we need to do. But like she's also a busy mom and gets the heart of women, and she's beautiful and amazing. And because I wasn't here, she like stepped in doing arts and crafts and things with my kids, and I love it. So I feel like it's just I don't know, it's us living life together, and we're kind of in the same season of being busy moms, homeschooling, and also dealing with health stuff and having a heart and passion for women to know their worth and dignity. And it's just really beautiful. So if you're not already on Patreon, I have the link in the description. Please support us on Patreon. Not because I want money, because I'm good. I don't do this to make money. Like, it's nice when it pays for itself. In the beginning, like we were going in the hole every month, just paying for all the things. And now I'm like, if it could just be free, that's fine. I don't need to make anything off this. But I have a good friend. I have multiple good friends that have worked for me, and they've all been homeschooling moms. I've hired one company one time and one individual who wasn't married yet. But other than that, everyone else I've had working for me has been homeschooling moms. And I love that I can give them an outlet. And I'm obviously extremely flexible with like our family comes first. Like all the women I've hired know like, okay, their number one thing is being a daughter of God. That's their top priority. After that, it's being wife and being mother and schooling your kids as well. And then after that, like, and it's quite a bit. We're like, okay, here's God, here's husband and children and family, here's homeschooling them, trying to run our house, and then here's Among the Lilies. Like, I love this and I love meeting y'all and talking to you, and this is good. But the priority needs to be down here. It shouldn't be number one. And Matt said that for a while. He's like, all the ways that you don't like become number one on Among the Lilies or whatever, he's like, all the ways you fail in your ministry, you're succeeding in life with trying to make first things first, right? And that is God and my husband and my children. I have a screen over here. I'm looking at a picture of them. I didn't realize that popped up. But for those of you that support me on Patreon, thank you so much. We have lots of different tiers and you get different things at different levels, but I want more support on Patreon so I can hire more homeschooling moms that have gifts of writing and taking photos and organizing my calendar and events and all the things. I'm going to be flying next week to EWTN to do some recording for Women Made New. I wrote a chapter for a book for Crystalina Everett, and so I'm flying there to do that. And then when I do that, I need people to help tag team my kids and drive them here to there and schooling and all the things. And so I love doing that. And y'all that support me on Patreon help me do that. And then there's different levels. So my Marco Polo ladies are amazing. Y'all are the best. So I have this tier where you get a Marco Polo group, and it's basically this private video chat. And there's always a good handful or two of us chatting. And it's beautiful because people are giving advice on just getting married. We have engaged girls. People are giving advice on having new babies and breastfeeding and colicky or vaccine, to vaccinate, to not vaccinate. And it's just really beautiful. All these women are like gorgeous and non-judgmental, and they're my sounding board. They're who I go to. Should I do this for Among the Lilies? Should I do that? And they're just wonderful and amazing. And then I also have this sex series. I have a series that's behind the Patreon wall because I don't want Joe Smo or your average person listening. Oh, yay. Hi, people. Right. Praise God. Christ is risen. Happy Easter. I should have started with Happy Easter. Happy Easter, everyone. Yes, feel free to write stuff in the comments. I'll read it in a second. I'm too ADD. I can't keep talking and look at that. I'll do it in a minute. But yes, so I have a sex series over there. So Matt and I just released a video. It was this past week. Pints with Aquinas pulled a clip of marital intimacy and how often we should be coming together and what that looks like. And it's been massively popular. I can't even remember how many people it's reached. Like, I've been shocked by it. I'm like, oh, wow, people really want to know about this. Well, if you like that, you will love these women that I interview. I interview just some good friends of mine that have had very different experiences. We have a couple of priests that are patrons, and they give the username and promo code to everyone in their pre-Cana class. So these girls that are going through getting ready for marriage, and they listen to me interview friends of mine, and it's really lovely and beautiful. It's making the theology of the body come alive in a more practical way. And it's like, okay, if you are about to get married, here's the things you ought to know. And this is how it worked for this girl in her marriage. This is how it worked for this girl in her marriage. And we're all very different. Every individual is so different, and then every couple is so different. And I try to interview people that have had very different experiences. And my friends are just beautiful and lovely and just very much share from the heart. And there's a lot that you can learn from that. So you can get that over on Patreon. So one thing, yeah, wow, praise God. I'm sorry about the EDS, the mast cell activation syndrome, POTS, dysautonomia. I also have I have tons of learning disabilities and ADD when I was a kid, but I was a kid in the 80s and 90s. So they didn't figure out what it was. They just stamped you with learning disabilities. There you go. Or ADD, here's a bunch of medicine. And I've realized more, there's so many more things you can do now and more, I think I'm dyslexic, which I think I've thought before, but recently I had someone give me a test and I passed it with flying colors for being dyslexic. And so it's interesting to do things so I realized one thing you can do if you struggle with dyslexia is march in place. And my body naturally does the opposite. And so it's trying to get it, teaching myself, okay, when my left elbow goes up, my right knee needs to go up, and practicing that to try to rewire things in the brain. But I find it very fascinating. I recently when I went to Florida, I was listening to a lot of books on tape. And the unschooling stuff really stuck out to me. Let me tell you what book in particular I really loved. I was listening to a lot of it, and I kept going back and forth because I had my son in the car. And so I've been reading The Body Keeps the Score, which is a really good but hard book to get through. And I find myself getting stuck in spots and just needing more time to pray and process before I can finish listening to it and getting through it. And then it's not child friendly at all. And so I would go back and forth between that and then a couple homeschooling ones. But the one book that I really loved was Dumbing Us Down by John Taylor Gatto. I'm not sure how to say his last name, but Dumbing Us Down. He is a New York school, or he was a New York City school teacher. He was a very successful businessman originally, and then he decided to teach, and he won like Teacher of the Year award, all this stuff. He was like a really good teacher, won all these awards, and he's basically saying, just so you know, this is dumbing us all down. This whole school system, the way we have it structured, it does not work. We are trying to put people into, it's very interesting. I've mainly done Montessori and homeschooling my children's career. So my oldest is 15. So honestly, I think those of you that have babies are pretty much homeschooling them with the looser definition. Like, okay, you taught your baby to eat. That's schooling them, right? Like schooling in a more untraditional sense, but just educating. Forget the term schooling, educating. Anyone that has had a child has educated them. And most people just educate them until they get to whatever age, fill in the blank. If you're working full time, 18 months, and then you put them in the system. Or maybe 3 years old, preschool, or maybe 5 years old, kindergarten. But you were the primary educator of your child prior to that point. Most likely you and your spouse, if you're married. Or I have a lot of friends that work and their grandparents look after the kids. So you, your husband, and your parents or whoever is looking after them, y'all are the educators of these children, right? We teach them how to eat. We give them food. I loved when I think in Ireland you naturally do this because baby food was really expensive there. So we didn't buy baby food. And I have a good friend of mine, Sheena Foy. I've had her on the show before. She's a mom of 7, and her husband is the director of Net Ministries in Ireland. But they're a lovely couple. And I remember being like, how do you afford baby food? Because we were missionaries. We didn't have much money. And she's like, Cameron, you don't need baby food. Just make your own. I was like, well, what do you mean make your own? She's like whatever you're having for dinner, you mash it up and feed it to the baby and then give them pieces of things. And I was like, oh, okay. And then later, so that's kind of how I just naturally did it with my first few kids, mainly because it was too expensive to buy baby food. And then when I lived in California, I learned about the baby fed weaning and wait, is that what you call it? Is it baby fed weaning? I don't know. There's something that they're like, this is what's best to do. And giving your kids food and letting them pick up, grab, eat. And then my youngest was a NICU baby and he didn't have the tools to pick up a piece of food and put it in his mouth. So we had to teach him all that. We had to pry open his hands and rub different things and do occupational therapy with him and teach him how to pick up his food. But most kids naturally at a certain age will just pick up food and put it in their mouth. And then you, as the mom, know, okay, these are the things he ought to put in his mouth. These are the things he ought not put in his mouth. So you do that and you cut up little pieces or strips and you soft boil the food or whatever. And so you're educating your child on what's good to eat. And then you do the same thing with potty training them. You do the same thing with learning how to talk. They say things and you work with them. And so I feel like it's very natural to do that. But for some reason, the way that I was raised in the US, and I feel like a lot of y'all that are more Western cultures, it's like, okay, you can teach them all these things until you cannot teach your child how to read. You are not trained. You need a trained expert. This person has a degree and they know how to best teach your child. So now put them into the system and they will teach them how to read. They will teach them math. They will teach them. And what we do is we like overly divide things. We're like, okay, this is math. This is science. This is history. And we very much put things in different compartments. And in this book, this guy talks about it and he's like, the saddest thing is he's like, you see kids playing and they were given tools to learn something in history and they build this thing and they're experimenting with it and learning different things. And then the teacher says, stop children, put it up. It's time for science. And he's like, that was science. They're learning and they're experimenting and kids naturally learn through play. And, I don't know. And I just find it really interesting. A good friend of mine, Bonnie Landry, runs a podcast called, I know it, Homeschooling with Joy, Homeschooling. If you look up Bonnie, Make Joy Normal. That's what it is. And I love it. Homeschooling's just not even in the title. Make Joy Normal. Cozy Homeschooling. And Sarah Mackenzie, Read Aloud Revivals, another one where I love these women and that they do educate their children, but it overflows from a good relationship. Well, Sarah Mackenzie, obviously in the title, it's Read Aloud Revival. Pick good books, read it to your kids, and that will educate them, right? And whenever I often hit stumbling blocks in my homeschooling because I feel like I do something and it works for a while and I'm like, it's not working anymore. What do I need to do? How do I change this? And when I first had kids, I thought I can't homeschool because I had a friend who is a beautiful mom. She is a lot more melancholic than me and she's choleric too, but she's like the more organized choleric. And she had her kids wear a uniform and sit in their desks. So she had like all these desks set up in their schoolroom. They had a schoolroom. They had worksheets. It was more, I think maybe it was Seton. It was a curriculum that was more, and then I did like early on, my first homeschool hybrid was traditional education. And so 3 days a week, I homeschool my kids, but the other 2 days they went into the classroom and we used like Abeka and worksheets. And so on those homeschool days, I fought with my children to sit in desk and to write. Hindsight, there's learning disabilities, which makes it harder. And then I also just have my boys in particular are very busy bodies and have a hard time sitting still and just doing a worksheet. And so it was torture. It was torture for my children. It was torture for me. I found another homeschool hybrid that was more classical and we did a lot better. We did math flashcards, jumping on the trampoline. We memorized beautiful long poetry that they totally got. And it fit us better. But originally, looking at my friend that was more traditional, she basically did what they do at school at home. And they were normally done by like 1 p.m. But they did and I don't know if it's my ADD. I have a hard time teaching my kids in that way. So I can't take just school curriculum and do it in my house. It doesn't work. Some people, it does work and they love that. And that's why even if you just Google homeschool curriculums, there's thousands of different types. And then there's different types of homeschoolers too. And so I think I thought I was like, okay, I definitely don't like traditional. I know I'm not that. And I'm like, I'm classical. We like classical. We like Latin. We like these things. This is the best. And my friend Bonnie Landry, the more I talked to her about it, and we were doing a classical hybrid. And she's like, Cameron, I think you're more unschooling. I'm like, oh no, I'm definitely not unschooling. I could maybe be eclectic because like I like Montessori, I like Charlotte Mason. So I'm an eclectic homeschooler. I take what I like and I leave what I don't. And I also just love teaching my kids in the minute, in the moment. And whatever it is, whatever their interest is, like we deep dive there. So for example, we were in Florida. I don't know if this is technically legal, but I didn't know. So when we were in Florida, my son, my 8-year-old, kept catching lizards. He was catching lizards left, right, and center, and he wanted to know what they were. So we looked them up, and we started labeling different types of lizards. And then same with fish. Like he went fishing. We were at a dock. He kept fishing and talking about, oh, Mom, you got to make sure on a catfish, they have these bars. They have these, whatever you call them. He's explaining it all to me. This is my kid who is a beekeeper. He loves bees. He pets bees. He identifies them. When he sees them, he's like, oh, Mom. And I was like, oh, yeah, there's a bee. Mom, that's not a bee. That is a wasp or whatever. Or I'll be like, oh, there's a honeybee. That's not a honeybee. That is a bumblebee. Here's the difference. So my 8-year-old's like telling me all these things about bees. He just loves science and nature. And so when we were there, he wanted to, he kept catching lizards and putting them in like little plastic containers that he was making. And we went to a thrift store that had this big glass aquarium looking thing. And it was $20, but he only had $5 for allowance, or maybe he had $6. He had $6 for allowance. And I was like, honey, $20 is a lot. He's like, I could bring it back on the drive home. Like, this would be so great. And I'm like, okay, I'll go halves with you, but that's still not enough. And so he goes up to someone working at the thrift store and it's like, hi, I'm sorry. Someone told me that that thing over there was 40% off. Is this by chance 40% off? And don't even think it was, but they said, yes, it was. And so my son got very excited. He's like, oh, I can buy this because it's 40% off, $20. And I was like, okay, well, you need to tell me what that is. And so we figured it out. I'm like, okay, what would half price be? Okay, now 40%. So like we're doing math, right? He doesn't know we were doing math in the thrift store, but he did math in the thrift store. And then he bought this thing. And then he did research on what the best things to put in the aquarium would be. And then the difference between the male lizard and female lizard, because if he got 2 male lizards, they would have killed each other. So we had to get a female and a male. And he chose to get was it a brown areola? It's also known as a Cuban areola, I think. I don't know. He knows the names. It sounds like that. But he chose the brown one, or also known as the, it's like a Central America lizard that's invaded Florida. And so he's like, really, we're helping Florida by taking it out. I won't take the green ones because they're native to Florida. And the brown ones are like wiping the green ones out. So like he just knew all this stuff. And he's like, and then I know this is a male because see how it has this, whatever the flap thing is that's like colored, you know? And he just watched them and observed them and just like figured out all this stuff about lizards. And he was excited while we were traveling. He's like, we're only doing reading and math. So to him, if you said, did you do homeschooling work while you were away? He said, yes, I did reading and math. My 8-year-old doesn't know that he does science all day, every day. He does, but he doesn't know it. He just does what he loves. He's just passionate about something and he's doing it. And he was like writing things about these lizards. But if I gave him an assignment and I said, I need you to write a report, even if I picked lizards, he'd be like, oh, Mom, I don't want to write a report on lizards. But he just does it, right? We were talking to my mom and he's telling her all about these lizards. And my mom's like, Cameron, I can't believe you're letting him bring a lizard. I'm like, he's really excited. Like, I'm going to let him bring the lizard. It's in a cage. We have like a 19-hour car ride. It kept him entertained. It was fine. And my mom was like, well, what are you going to feed it? He's like, well, I can feed it crickets, but the crickets need to be smaller than its head. I tried one cricket and it was too big. They couldn't swallow it. But I'm going to find very small crickets. They also will eat worms and they also eat applesauce. And my mom's like, did you go to a pet store? Like, how did you learn that? And he's like, I did my research, Nana. You got to do research. So like, he just looks it up. So like, that is unschooling at its finest. And so my friend Bonnie Landry, I would often talk to her as I was trying to like, I don't know, switch from COVID. I stopped the hybrid and I started doing it my own, just me homeschooling my kids. And I was like very much doing each child what they needed and changing it daily, but really yearly, kid by kid. We look at what does this child need? How can we best do it? And I also joke that I'm the best at homeschooling my kids when I pay someone else to do it. So I have this lovely woman who was also homeschooled. She's pregnant with her first baby, and she comes in sometimes 3 days a week, sometimes not at all because she's pregnant and gets sick. So some weeks she comes 3 days. Other weeks she comes 1 day. Other weeks she doesn't come at all. But she's helping me offset things. So she is very good at English and grammar and writing papers and things that I'm not good at. So I'm like, help my kids with this. And I give her a lot of freedom in what to do for the kids, as I also give my children freedom. I need to make sure they're learning and that they are reading and that we're learning more math. And I have some days we do math textbooks, other days we do Khan Academy, other days we're doing flashcards in the car, or like my son with reading. he had a dry erase board and we just went over different words and he was writing it and then like putting together a sentence from the different words. Another time we got these Post-it notes and we were learning new words, right? And we're like, okay, that's a short A, long A. And we're just repetition going over it. But our windows in the van were covered in Post-it notes. And then he say the words, put them up. And then once he'd remember them, he'd pull them down. And so it's like we're trying to engage the whole body, trying to keep us entertained as we're driving in the car. And same with the flashcards, doing math flashcards, you know? And I think that I used to think unschooling was crazy. So my friend Bonnie Landry was like, Cameron, you're really an unschooler. I'm like, no, I'm not. Unschoolers are not responsible parents. They just don't do anything. No offense, unschoolers out there. But that's what I thought. I thought unschooling was like, you do nothing. And I have one friend, her oldest is brilliant. And so she unschools all of her kids. But I'm like, you can do that because your child taught himself how to read when he was 2. Like he just loves like reading books and encyclopedias and math books. And we're doing this program with my youngest called Life of Fred because he doesn't like math. So we're doing these book series, Life of Fred. Fred is a 5-year-old who is a professor at Kitten's University, and he's a mathematician, and he's 5 years old. And he's very small because he doesn't live with his parents, so he eats out of the vending machine in the hallway. And we learn all sorts of big math terms from Fred, and we start in this Apples book, and you can go all the way up to calculus and trigonometry. We're not that far. We're still in the early, but my son loves it. We cuddle on a chair and we read our math book, and then he does a couple problems at the end of the book, or the end of the chapter rather. And it's fun. And we're learning really big math concepts in a fun way. And Fred gets older as you go. So like he's 5.5 now, because that's a huge difference when you're 5 and 5.5. But then he's eventually 6 and he's still a math professor. But it's like a fun way of learning math. And my friend, I was concerned, and my friend that used this program, I was like, and how are your kids at math? She's like, they're great. The first math book her oldest son did was her husband's college math book. He picked it up, and because he had done all the Life of Fred, he taught himself, figured it out, and could do all these amazing math problems. My kids are not mathematicians, but we're working on it. We're getting there. Yeah, I think Matt interviewed a good friend of ours, Steve Rumblesberg, and they talk about education. And he's a huge proponent of classical education. Our oldest is now doing a Chesterton track at a school, and he loves it. He loves this Socratic dialogue and the conversations, and paper to pen is still really hard, or fingers to keyboard is still really hard, but that's okay. Like this guy, I listened to a bunch of homeschooling or unschooling books on the drive, and I kept going back and forth between The Body Keeps the Score and a unschooling book, and I was like, so much of this correlates together, mainly because I'm on my own journey with my body still just not working correctly, and I'm doing all the right things. I'm eating all the right foods. I'm kind of exercising. When I feel good, I exercise. When I don't, I'm not able to. I'm doing the red light therapy, ultraviolet light therapy. I'm doing chiropractic care. I'm doing, I don't know, all sorts of different things. And I have all the specialists. I'm looking at all my levels. And so I feel like I've spent in some ways, since we moved here, the last 2.5 years, really focusing on my health and my body and learning what to do and what not to do. But in other ways, it's been like, I feel like my body really started breaking probably with my first C-section. So that was like 15 years ago, right? And it was very traumatic. Like I felt my entire C-section as things were being ripped and pulled all around. But really, I feel like my health started really dipping down when my 8-year-old was born. And he was crazy sick, kept almost dying. And it was just very traumatic. And then I had postpartum depression. So I'm like, I think something in my brain or in my body broke then, but I wasn't crazy sick. It wasn't till a few years later, so probably 5 years ago, when I had a miscarriage that wrecked me. I I broke. My body broke again. I had a week of bleeding and not being able to pass my baby, and mourning over the loss of the baby that I so desperately wanted. And yeah, it was hard. It was really hard. And then not only did I deal with the loss of baby Micah, of this baby that our whole family dealt with the loss of, I had to have a DNC, and something went very wrong nothing went wrong with the DNC. The doctor said everything was like textbook. But I think because of my endometriosis and my PCOS and all my other female issues, I have a whole slew of female issues that I didn't even know I had. I knew I had stage 4 endometriosis. I knew I had PCOS. I knew I had these other things, but then there's all these other terms that I've learned since that I also had, and a frozen pelvis, like all this stuff. And it was like my body was just prepped for, once they did that surgery, it was like someone lit a match and just everything went up in flames because everything was so covered and broken. And I tried to pretend like I was okay and tell my body I'm fine. And it was a birthday party for my daughter where one of my friends is like, a bunch of my friends kind of ganged up on me, and they're like, Cameron, you're not okay. Like, you're really sick. I'm like, no, I'm totally fine. And they're like, look over there. I'm like, I can look over there. And they're like, can you move your neck? And I'm like, no, but it's fine. It's fine that I can't move my neck. I'm totally fine. I'm okay. And they're like, something's wrong with you. And then I finally went back to the hospital, and I wasn't running a fever. Therefore, they didn't think I had an infection. And the next day, luckily, praise God, we have a good friend who is a doctor. And she told my husband, bring her into the city, bring her to Atlanta, find the doctor that did the DNC. Something's very wrong with her. She is very sick and she doesn't realize it. And he's like, I don't know what's wrong with you, but something's really bad. And at this point, I could barely walk. When I was in the ER, I was like vomiting from the pain. And I had a horrible migraine, and my whole body just kind of felt like it was shutting down. And then when I went to this doctor, he's like, I'm admitting you. I don't even think this is related to the miscarriage, but I'm putting you in the hospital because something's wrong. And I couldn't walk. I was in excruciating pain. It was mainly my core. My whole core hurt. And then I had a migraine. And then it got to the point where like I really couldn't open my eyes. Like the lights were just too intense. So they admitted me. And then that night when I was sleeping, my blood pressure plummeted. My white blood cells were dying off. So I ended up in the ICU. And so praise God, I was in the hospital, because I asked afterwards, I'm like, what would have happened? They're like, you would have just died in your sleep, like if you were not in the hospital. So God is so good that he arranged all these things. But during that time in the ICU, my body, everything broke. Everything in it broke. And by God's grace, I lived, and it was wonderful. But then I spent the next month in the hospital stumping all the doctors, and they're like, we don't know what's wrong. Something's really wrong with you. And so I feel like that's really when my body super broke. And then I white knuckled it and strong willed, I'm going to figure this out, and I'm just going to be fine, and I'm going to push through it. And I think hindsight, it made me sicker. But I got better, but then sicker. And then I would have like these weird, like, episodes that would just flare up. So it would be like sometimes once a month, my body would break down and I'd have to get hospitalized. Sometimes I make it 3 months, and it was always different things. Like it wasn't just like EDS, like I dislocated something and it hurt. It wasn't just my blood pressure. Like they thought it was Addison's disease for a while. I did have issues where my blood pressure just wouldn't. I lived on Myers cocktails, which are like IV fluids and minerals. And so I feel like I had good doctors looking at what was wrong, but still couldn't quite figure it out. And then when we moved here, it was like everything just shut down. Everything broke. And for whatever reason, Steubenville, I don't know if it's the cold weather. I don't know if it's the water, which I don't even drink the water, but sure, something here makes me sicker. And I think it is like watching my body, like, I don't know. And I've done a lot of healing stuff. So there's this great program called Restored that Jackie does. And it's like a bunch of CFRs, and it's lovely. And that was helpful. And I've done Healing the Whole Person with Dr. Bob Schutz, Sister Miriam James. You know, they have this great thing on the Hallow app for healing, and it's just beautiful. And so I've been trying to open that and trying to focus on like spiritual healing as well. And I do I do different prayer ministries and different things to try to look at that. But what I found very interesting this road trip, I'm going back and forth between the body keeps the score and also getting frustrated with my body. Like, why do you keep breaking down? Why do you do this? And then also the unschooling element of it. And then I also feel guilty that I'm not being the wife that my husband needs and the mom that my children need because I do keep falling apart. So like when we were in Guatemala, it was such a blessing. It was such a gift to be able to walk and exercise and like walk 5 miles, hike a volcano. We went swimming we were in Lake Atiland and it was beautiful and we were swimming and Matt's like, I've got to go get the paddleboard. Like I can't keep swimming. Like and he's like, I don't understand how you like were barely walking up the stairs when we were home, but now you're in this water and you're swimming further than I can. And Matt's in much better shape than me, right? But I don't know, like I felt good there and I don't know why. I don't know if it was the sun, if it was the heat, if it's like the perfect storm of everything, if I just got all my supplements just right. Like, I don't know. But with the unschooling stuff, I feel like I look back on my childhood and I was convinced by first grade I was stupid and I wasn't as smart as my sister or my other classmates. I got held back in first grade. And so I was like I started late, I think, because I was sick a lot. I had a lot of hearing issues and I was always in and out of the hospital getting tubes and different things done, which is funny because I talked about it in my episode with Caroline where I'm like, I identify as a very healthy person. But I think I just identify as that. It doesn't mean I actually was very healthy growing up. But as far as schooling goes, I was convinced I was stupid by first grade. And I would work my behind off and not do well performance-wise in school. And I had a couple really good school teachers who taught me differently. And they're like, I just think you learn differently. So we're going to do this. And I hated them for modifying the way I was learning, but I actually learned from them. And so I kind of secretly loved them, but in public, I didn't like them. Spelling bees, I felt like it was just humiliation. I was like the Brian Regan, cat, C-A-T-T. Yeah, I know cat only has, or no, K-A-T-T. That's the joke. K-A-T-T. I know cat, or no, he spells it K-A-T. Okay, this is the way the joke goes. Let me get it right this time. Okay, spelling bee, the kid that's like purposely, I'm just going to sit down so I don't have to be humiliated. Cat, K-A-T. And he goes to sit down. He's like, yeah, I knew cat had 2 T's. He still didn't know how to spell cat, but he got to sit down and not be humiliated. If your kids are good at spelling bees, I'm sure they love that in class. But things like that, I'm like, I'm not going to do this to my kid. I try to put them in school. I had 2 kids in a public school 1 year. And I kept fighting with the school because I felt like they felt like my kids were their property. And I'm like, these are my kids. I'm the parent. I'm going to decide when they come to school and when they don't. And as long as you allow devices and kids to bring in these devices from outside, from their homes, I'm sure they're good kids. But I think they have older siblings or maybe parents that have things on those devices I don't want my sweet little first grader seeing. So as long as you're allowing that, my kid is going to miss more days of school. And then there was other things too. And I tried it and I'm like, okay, this is what we're supposed to do. This is how we're supposed to educate our kids. And there were so many things in me that I'm like, this is not how I want to educate my children. Like, I don't want to do it. No judgment on you. If you have your kid in public school, no judgment. Just make sure your eyes are open and you see what they're being taught. I know COVID, a lot of people were like, what the heck is this? And I think parents became aware and they're like, you're teaching my kids what? My first grader, you're doing gender theory? This is not okay. My kid doesn't need to know any of this stuff. And what you're teaching them is very confusing. Like yesterday was at a party. I have a neighbor. She's beautiful, beautiful woman, pregnant with baby number 3. Her 2-year-old, I was telling her, I'm like, are you excited about your new baby? And she's like, yeah, we're having 2 new babies. I was like, you are? Where is the other baby? In my stomach. I'm like, wow, congratulations. So I'm talking to this 2-year-old who's pregnant. And, she's 2. It's okay. It's like She learns through imagination. She learns through pretend. The parents aren't concerned that the 2-year-old's telling people she's pregnant because they know she's not pregnant because she's 2. But it's so sweet to hear the way she talks about it. She's like, yeah, I've got to eat good food so the baby will grow and be healthy, just as mom needs to eat good food. And it's adorable. But you would be crazy if you booked her an OBGYN appointment. And you're like, well, she identifies as being pregnant. I need the OB to do an ultrasound and to do a vaginal exam on this 2-year-old. That is abuse. That would be child abuse if my friend took her 2-year-old to the OB and was like, please, she needs a pap smear because she's pregnant. We need to make sure things aren't. And any doctor, my friend's not crazy. But if my friend was, and she's like, well, my daughter's convinced she's pregnant. Could you please do these exams? Part of the Hippocratic oath, I think that's what you call it, whatever, the doctor oath that they take is do no harm. So the doctor would say, listen, I'm not doing this to your kid. You know she's not pregnant, right? She's pretending. She's learning through play. This is fine. But no, I'm not going to keep doing this, right? And like, this 2-year-old's very smart. She's very sweet. She's lovely. I'm not concerned for her mental well-being because she thinks she's pregnant. I'm pretty sure she knows that she's playing a game and is pretending to be pregnant because mommy's pretending to be pregnant. Just as my kids would take a baby doll and stick it under their shirt to feed the baby. They're pretending. They don't think they're actually lactating. They learn through play. And this book is all about that. It's all about kids learning through play. And it's very interesting. And I don't even know where I was going with it. But the reason I bring this up is because maybe, just maybe, homeschooling is not, or unschooling is not as crazy as we thought. So I feel like people used to look upon homeschool families prior to the pandemic as, oh, wow, okay, well, good for you. And even family members. I have family members that I think the majority of my family feels like, well, your kids are coming out okay, even though you homeschool them. And they're not fans of it. But I'm okay with that. They don't have to be a fan. I know this is what's best for my children, and I love them, and I'm trying to do what's best for them. And there have been times that we've gone to a homeschool hybrid, or right now I have one in a 5-day-a-week Chesterton track, because he desires that, and he's loving it. And so it's like, okay, I don't know how long this will last for, but right now, this is good. Oh, someone's bringing up carnivore diet in the comments. I don't know if I told you guys. Did I tell you? Why is my mouse not working? Oh, because it's over there. How do I bring it over here? Oh, what is going on here? How do I bring... My mouse is like on the wrong screen. Huh. All right, well, I'll just read the comments I can see. I can't see them all. I'm re-listening and taking notes. Oh, it's just a verbal diarrhea coming out of my mouth. So good luck. If you take notes, please put them in the comments below. So others will know what I'm talking about. This is so weird. I don't know how to make my thing come over here. But anyhow, great idea for research. Love you. Cecilia. Hello, my friend. Cecilia is another one who homeschools her kids, and her kids are amazing and awesome. And I feel like when I was younger, I kept looking at these families, and Cecilia Everett's like on the comment thread, even though I can't see the rest of it. But she's one of the ones that I'm like, I want to do what you're doing. Your kids are awesome. And what's interesting is we have friends. I have lots of friends in the Ottawa area who all homeschooled very different. Some did traditional schooling at home. Others had their kids in a local Catholic school. Others did more unschooling. Others did more Charlotte Mason. Others did more Montessori. Others did more, what is that other one? Woodruff or whatever. I don't know what it's called. Others just read good books. And others did their own thing. It was a combination. And guess what? All their kids are awesome. So I'm not saying you have to unschool. If you're listening to this, if you want your kids to succeed in life and be healthy, happy individuals, unschool. I think I'm just realizing, I think stupid Bonnie Landry was right. She's not stupid. I love her. And I've had episodes with her, Make Joy Normal. So I don't think I've done a video with her, but I have audio. So if you go back in our archives of podcasts, Bonnie Landry, Make Joy normal. I was friends with her before. So like we share like a BFF, and one of my best friends is one of her best friends. And she's just so loving and kind. And I would bring to her, here's what's going on. She's like, okay, Cameron, let's redirect. What if you just didn't teach math for a while? I'm like, Bonnie, you don't understand. They're not doing well at math, so I need to do more math. And she's like, nope, you need to sit back, take a deep breath, use chocolate chips. So I did chocolate chip math, and my kids loved math again. Yeah, so no more inflammation. Okay, so anyhow, so I feel like the Lord's teaching me a lot through this unschooling thing. And right now I currently do a Charlotte Mason co-op that I love, and my kids are doing very well at and really enjoy it. And I'm loving bringing in Charlotte Mason stuff. But I'm also I feel like because like I have been, as I said, homeschooling, whatever, educating my children at home for 15 years, it's changed and adapted, and I'm more confident in it now. And I'm like, you know what? I don't have to do it the way you told me to do it. And I think that's the biggest thing that parents need is Waldorf. That was the other one I was looking for. Thank you. All right. Someone talked about carnivore diet. I'll do another episode on carnivore diet. So I've done carnivore all of Lent, and mainly because I'm like, why not? What do I have to lose? It's supposed to be anti-inflammatory. I had such a strict diet prior to carnivore that I don't know. Yeah, I'll do a whole nother episode on that. But talking about, this one I'm going to try to stick with homeschooling and unschooling. So no, I'll do another episode maybe next week on carnivore. I have my friend Laura Horn who does Too Far with Laura, I think is her thing. I got to go pick her up, actually. I got to see what time she's coming in because I got to go get her. But I got to double check when she's coming in. I can't miss her. I can't be like, sorry, I was on air. That's why I didn't come. Okay. I'm going to do a whole nother episode on carnivore diet and my thoughts on it. And if I think it's helped or not helped and in what areas it has. I did both. I'll do a whole other episode. Right now, just unschooling. So unschooling is not as crazy as I thought. And I think I naturally do this a lot and just I think the main thing is look for teaching opportunities with your kids. When they present itself, teach in that moment. And we still do homeschool time. So my kids know from about 8 to noon every day is our homeschooling time. So we're going to homeschool in that time. We do dictation, we do math, we do reading, and sometimes we do spelling, sometimes we do, I don't know. There's other things that we do. We do history probably once a week. Sometimes we do science. But my kids know that chunk of time is mainly for schooling. But there are days that I have a neighbor who also homeschools. And it's, Mom, could we please do schooling with them? This is what we're going to do. And so I evaluate on the day. I'm like, okay, actually, that would be great because I'm not feeling well and I rather, I need to spend more time doing red light therapy or something. So sure, you want to do schooling with them, go for it. And our kids cross ages, right? So like sometimes my 8-year-old would say, can I do reading and math with the 10-year-old boy across the street? That 10-year-old boy is a very strong reader and very good at math. And so I'm like, sure, yeah, you can do that. Because even though he's only 2 years apart from my son, he's good in those things. So it's like, sure, you can do that. Or my daughter will want to do schoolwork with a younger kid. And it's like, that's okay. My daughter's still learning by reading a book below her learning level, but then trying to teach it to her friend that's a couple years younger than her. So it's very interesting. And then they also just learn through playing together. And they learn different things and they do their own research and they like reading, different books teaching you about this, that, and the other. And part of our co-op that we're doing, we do nature journals and my kids love it. We go out and absorb things in nature and we draw and we write about different plants and different seeds and different birds, and it's fun. I love our history program. We use, I think it's Tan Press, and it's the history timeline. And some people choose to just do the book and read through it. We like the audiobook because I draw and paint with my kids while we're listening while we're listening to it. And it's just a time for us to all come around the table and drink a cup of tea and draw and listen. And most of the time, in theory, we do a chapter a week. There's some weeks, like this past week, we didn't do any. But then we'll go on a road trip and do like 6 chapters in one day. And so, yeah, and we're jumping all over. We're not even sticking to one time period. We were trying to do the time period that is the French Revolution and also covers World War II, because this summer we're taking our kids on the pilgrimage to France. And so we're actually going to go to where D-Day happened. So we're learning about that. We're going to where Joan of Arc was burned at the stake. So we've been learning about that. We have like a book basket that's all the books in it are to do with St. Bernadette, Margaret Mary, World War II, all these things that we're going to be seeing and experiencing there. And then we've also kind of done the same thing with Guatemala, things that we saw and learned about. So this Saint Hermando Pedro is this amazing saint in Central America. He's the first saint in Guatemala, but he may be the first in Central America. But we learned about him because we were there and we saw his body and we prayed for him. And we were praying for a friend of ours who, actually, I'll share it later because I don't know if I can share that yet or not. But it was really beautiful. We were praying and interceding for someone, and it was just, God made it so clear that he was a perfect saint to intervene for this girl and this baby that we were praying for. And he just had like such a heart for it. And so it's neat to see the light bulbs going off in the kids' heads as it's going off in mine. And so we just take advantage of these moments to teach, right? Let's see, what else? Okay. You always thought I should try carnivore. I had so many people after I did my episode with Matt, everyone said that. I'm like, all right, I'm doing it. And so I've done carnivore all Lent with the exception of in the beginning, because I was in Guatemala. I kept in avocado because I needed high fat because I lost too much weight. I got a little too thin when I first started doing it. And then I brought in butter to have like a stick of butter a day to like keep weight on me because, and then I was doing mangoes, but that was just Guatemala. Once I got back, I got those out. And I did just straight up carnivore. And then I did Lion's diet just for about 10 days. And so before I switch back to anything else, I think I'm going to do Lion's diet for 10 more days and see how I feel. Because days that I do, like Fridays during Lent were very hard. I felt sick. I did it with permission of my doctor and I talked about different things. But the beef is like a huge element for me. I really need the beef. But I will do 10 more days of just Lions and then I will fill you in on my thoughts of carnivore. I love your philosophy. I have a friend at church who homeschools and very involved in spreading the message. I had a Facebook. No, I've never read the ADHD Advantage, but I've heard about it and I do want to read it because I was diagnosed before it was school. So like when I was a kid in school, there was 3 kids in my class, no, 4. There was 3 boys and me in my class that had ADD. And it was before they started putting the H in it. This is like early 90s when I was in school when I got diagnosed, maybe late 80s. But in my entire school, there was probably less than 50 kids with ADHD. There's a couple in each class. And I think I was the only girl, or there may have been one other. So it was before like girls really got diagnosed with it. But I'm really for me, I'm very anti-drugs. I have a good friend of mine who just started taking ADHD medicine and she's loving it. And she says it's helping her a lot. I had a Ritalin Bush. Actually, I need to do a whole other episode on ADHD too. But anyhow, for right now, unschooling, if you haven't looked into it, maybe look into it. And I think even if your kids go to a traditional school, maybe there's this school I heard about, Springfield, Massachusetts, that's amazing and awesome. And it's a 5-day-a-week school. But basically, the way the school works is they're basically unschooling in school. So maybe you live there and you have this. That's great. Or maybe there are still some school districts that are great, that are public schools. I don't know of any, but there could be. My sister has her kids at a charter school in Texas that's classical and is very good, and they're loving it. So I'm not saying you need to pull your kids out wherever they are and just unschool them, but I think it's interesting to look into unschooling. And if we all incorporate more of that into our lives, I think it would be good for our children, like just helping them learn because they naturally want to learn. And I think sometimes if we put them in an environment where they don't thrive, they don't want to learn anymore. And they'll say things like, I hate school. And I'm not saying my kids don't say that. I have kids that do say they hate school. And I'm like, but you don't hate school. You hate sitting and doing a worksheet. You hate when we sit with a phonics book. And sometimes we need to do it and other times we don't. So, you know, we're still figuring it out. You're completely new to unschooling. Yeah, me too. I don't, yeah, it's funny. My friends that do a lot of homeschooling and have known me for a long time always say that I'm an unschooler. And I'm like, no, I'm not. But I think I thought it was a bad word. I'm over the fact that it's a bad word. Or you have to be like my friend Rachel, whose oldest is just a genius and loves to read books and taught himself how to read at 3. It's like your family can unschool because your oldest kid is technically schooling all the others. But it's different. Every family, it looks differently, but I think it's something not to be afraid of and we should be aware of. And I love what I'm learning with it. And I think it's good. I think it's the whole human person. And we as Christians or Catholics, we're Christian and Catholic. But I think I have a lot of people that follow that are faith-based. And when you are, you know that you are a mind, body, soul composite. All of this is you. You can't say, and this is what's interesting about the body keeps the score as well. Like I can't say my body is bad because it is falling apart and I hate my body, but I am good. No, my body also has to be good. Or my spirit is really, really good. Some different religions with their theology even, it's like, okay, deep down at the core, you are poo. But Christ has covered you in snow and beauty, so therefore you are purified. No. Deep down at our core, we are good. We are very, very good, right? When we were created in the beginning of time, the Lord said, this is good. We are good. Yes, sin has entered the world, and you and I both have concupiscence, which is not good. We chose the bad fruit in the garden. We let Satan whisper in our ear, and oftentimes we listen to Satan more than we do to ourselves or to God, or sometimes we think it's our self voice, but it's really the enemy telling us we're stupid, we're dumb, we're ugly, whatever. And we need to tell him to shut up and go to hell where he belongs because he's a God-damned liar. He is damned to hell for all eternity for being a big, fat, ugly liar. In Australia, they refer to Satan as old hairy legs is up to his old tricks. And I love it. I love that it's like, please, old hairy legs, go back. But we are all of the above, right? And I think if I'm understanding unschooling environment, like they're teaching correctly, what I'm learning through some books that I'm listening to is they are saying you need to look at the whole person. You've got to look at, like, don't divide schooling up into all these different individual categories. And other homeschoolers do the same thing. Classical education is very much, we are teaching all these things and it's weaving, and Charlotte Mason too, it's weaving them all together. And yes, right now you're listening to a particular composer or looking at a particular artist, but all subjects are being woven through all these different things. Like there's no box system. And I think unschooling does that too. And then it's like your classroom is not your schoolroom at your house or the classroom that you go to when you go to your school. Everything's your classroom. Outdoors. That is my favorite classroom, is outdoor space. It's the animals that we encounter. It's the flowers that we see. It's springtime. It's beautiful. My son and I, when we were driving down, he's like, Mom, I feel like we're traveling through time. We're fast forwarding. It was winter when we left Steubenville and it slowly became spring. And then when we got to Florida, it was summer. He's like, we are full on summer now. And then same when we went back, he's like, Mom, we're going back in time because we were in summer and now we're in spring. And when we get to Steubenville, it'll be winter. But we got here and he's like, Mom, spring came. We brought it. I'm like, yep, we brought it with us. We brought spring with us. And it was really beautiful to go over all the seasons and talk about the different things we see. And he didn't know we were doing school. And I think that I'm trying to get out of that mindset of doing school and just, we're learning. We're just learning. I'm still learning. I am old. Look at all my gray hair. I'm like super old and I'm still learning, right? Praise God. So yeah, unschooling's maybe not as crazy as you thought. It's not as crazy as I thought, but thank you guys so much for watching, liking, subscribe, share this. I don't even know how I can end this video because my mouse isn't on the screen. So I'm going to try to end the video and we will see. How do I change this. I feel like I don't even know if I can end this video. Okay, so I'm over here. Maybe I can just search it on here. Ecam. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to search Ecamm over here, and then I'm going to close out the episode. I'm really sorry that I don't have a button. I don't know what I did, but this is all working, but this is my screen. So let's see. Oh, here we go. But see, it's showing up over here. How do I bring it over? Oh, this is quite frustrating. I apologize. This is the end of the episode. Thank you so much for watching. Goodbye. Feel free to stay on as I try to figure this out, but I may have to call my husband to figure it out. Praise you, Jesus. Yeah, if you're still on here, like, subscribe, share this episode, go join Patreon, do whatever you want. I'm going to try to do this. I'm sorry, the person... and he's not even picking up. All right, I'm going to call Thursday. Let's see if he picks up. Maybe... Oh, here we go. Live. See, but it's over there. How do I bring it over here? How do I end? Hey, Cameron. Hey, how are you? I am in the middle of a live. Well, I'm at the end of my live stream, but I can't turn it off because are you at the studio? I'm at the studio. My mouse is on the screen on the left, but I have Ecamm open on my... So the mouse is on the screen on the left, like Matt's screen, and then I can't press N because I don't know how to make the mouse go back to my normal screen. Try going out the other side of the monitor. Try what? Try taking the mouse out the other side of the monitor. Oh, but I don't have a mouse. It's like the mouse on my computer. Yeah, it's only on the TV screen. Hi, honey. I'm screaming. Yeah, thanks. Appreciate it. So that's Thursday, aka Josiah, Matt's guy. He said he'll be right here. So I'm just going to keep talking to you until he comes. Oh, praise you, Jesus. Praise you, Jesus. Okay, so what else do we want to talk about? Yeah, I'll do another episode on carnivore. I'll cover that. Any of you that unschool, please tell me your wisdom and why you do it, what you like about it. Put it in the comments below. Or if you're part of, there's so many groups. Here's the thing. Honestly, there's too many homeschool groups. I used to try to join them, and there's some great ones on Facebook and other platforms, but I would just get overwhelmed. It was too much. And I tried to just do, Bonnie Landry helps me keep it simple. I think I always get too complicated in my schooling, and Bonnie's lovely where she kind of brings it back. She keeps the main things. And yeah, and if you don't already follow her, it's actually funny. I hooked her up with my friend Elizabeth Evans, and the two of them together run the Make Joy Normal. And I love that the main thing is having a really good relationship with your child and finding joy in your schooling and letting it happen whenever it happens. And it's not, yay, new listener, welcome. I'm glad you're here. It's so funny. Sometimes people tell me they're listeners and I'm like, sorry. Or like, oh, I'll check out your podcast. And I'm like, you probably won't like it. I say a lot of things that people don't like. But if you're like me, you'll like it because I don't know. I'm crazy and all over the place, but that's okay. Say a prayer next week for EWTN, please, because I always tell Kristalina, she's like, Cameron, why would you say that? I'm like, Kristalina, you know I'm not EWTN squeaky clean. So pray for patience for the people that'll be working with me. So I guess every year they pick a book that they do a Bible study on. And so this year they've picked Women Made New. If you haven't already gotten this book, it's lovely. It's amazing. Kristalina did a great job. And I think I don't know how many of us there are. There's at least 5, but maybe a dozen. I think there's 12 different women. Let's go with 12. A dozen women sharing our own experiences and our own thoughts, and different chapters are on different things. And it's lovely. So I guess they're doing a Bible study off of that. And then certain ones of us are flying there to do some recording. Hey, thanks so much. Appreciate it. I can't get the mouse thing. I already said bye to everyone. I'm like, feel free to stay because I'm still on.
It's just look, the other side of the monitor.
Yeah. Wait. Oh, you went that way.
Yeah, they're arranged wrong.